Dear students, in this module we will discuss and learn about validity and reliability in detail. The learning objectives of this module are meaning and importance of validity and reliability, types and procedures to test the validity and reliability. Social science research, the terms validity and reliability are often used relating to the tools of the data collection, that is instruments and data obtained. It is always easy to talk, ask and discuss about these terms, but difficult to practice in one's own research. However, researchers will try to see that their research is valid and reliable. In order for research data to be of value and of use, they must be both reliable and valid. First, we will learn about the validity, its meaning and importance. The concept of validity is mostly related to a research instrument or tool of data collection. Validity is defined as the degree to which the researcher has measured what he has set out to measure. According to Curlinger, the commonest definition of validity is epistemized by the question, are we measuring what we think we are measuring? These definitions will give two ideas of validity, namely whether the instrument by a researcher is measuring what is supposed to measure, and how can one establish that an instrument is measuring what it is supposed to measure. Of these two, the first one will be answered by the person who designed the study, that is the researcher, the readership of the report and experts in the field. But then answering the second question becomes difficult in the senses that on what basis the researcher, the readership of the report and the experts make the judgment. About validity, we will first see the types of validity. Validity is measured in two ways. One is phase and content validity, and the second one is criterion related validity. Under the phase and content validity, generally the judgment that an instrument is measuring what it is supposed to is primarily based upon the logic link between the questions and the objectives of the study. In view of this, the application of the phase and content validity is easy. It is the common practice that each question or item on the research instrument must have a logic link with an objective. Establishment this link is an indication of the validity of the instrument. Greater the link, higher the phase validity of the instrument. This can be said as phase validity. On the other hand, the researcher also would see that all the items and questions included in the instrument are covering all the aspects of the issue or phenomenon being measured. Establishing that the different items of a research instrument cover various aspects of the issue is an indication of the content validity of the instrument. Greater the coverage, higher the validity. Likewise, content validity is also judged on the basis of the extent to which statements or questions represent the issue they are supposed to measure, as judged by the researcher, the readership and experts in the field. Though all these appear to be easy, the problems do arise because of subjective logic and judgment differentially by different people involved, and also the extent to which questions reflect the objectives of a study, as well as to measure the constructs, links, as well as to measure the constructs like intelligence, self-esteem, empowerment of women, personality dimensions, etc. The second type of validity is criterion related validity. In criterion related validity, the researcher will check the measure developed by him with that of some observable criterion. How is this different from content validity? In content validity, the criteria are the construct definition itself. It is a direct comparison. In criterion related validity, the researchers usually make a prediction and about how the measure will perform based on theory of the construct. The difference among the different criterion related validity types are in the clients they use as the standard for judgment. The criterion related validity used to be measured in three ways, like concurrent validity, predictive validity and construct validity. With regard to the concurrent validity, this is based on comparison between the instrument used to measure a phenomenon by the researcher with another instrument. For example, if a researcher wants to develop a new scale to measure empowerment of women, he has to administer this instrument among both the working women and non-working women. If both the instruments are measuring empowerment of women more or less similar, the instrument is assumed to have high concurrent validity. The second one is predictive validity. In predictive validity, the researchers try to assess the instrument's ability to predict something it should theoretically be able to predict. It is judged by the degree to which an instrument can forecast an outcome. For instance, the researcher might theorize that the measure of academic performance at collegiate level should be able to predict how well a person will do in higher education based professions. Then the researcher will give the measure to those professors in universities and see if there is a high correlation between scores of the measure, that is academic performance, and their performance as professor of universities. A high correlation would provide evidence for predictive validity, that is, it would show that the measure can correctly predict something that the researcher theoretically thinks it should be able to predict. Usually, both the concurrent predictive validity are treated usually both the concurrent and predictive validity are tested based on coefficient of correlation. It is also coined as a validity coefficient. Here, higher the correlation coefficient, higher the criterion validity. The third type of validity is construct validity. Construct validity is an indication of a research instrument to measure what is supposed to. It is mostly based on statistical procedures. It is determined by ascertaining the construction of each construct to the total variance observed in a phenomenon. For example, suppose a researcher is interested in carrying out a study to find out the extent of empowerment of women among the members of the self-help group. Then the researcher constructs the empowerment in terms of access to and control over resources, autonomy in decision making and freedom of movement as the factors indicative of empowerment of women. After the pretest of data analysis, the researcher use statistical procedures to establish the correlation of each construct, that is the three factors mentioned earlier, to the total variance, that is empowerment of women. The contribution of each of these factors to the overall empowerment, that is total variance, is an indication of the degree of validity of the instrument. Here, the greater the variance attributable to the constructs, the higher the validity of the instrument. Though this is more sophisticated one, the researchers need to know about the required statistical procedures. Now, we will move upon to the next topic called reliability. We will first learn about the meaning and its importance. Reliability is another concept which is mostly used in social science research. Generally, if a research tool is consistent and stable, it can be said that it is reliable. It is usually said that the greater the degree of consistency and stability in an instrument, the greater the reliability. In the words of Moser and Culton, a scale or test is reliable to the extent that repeat measurements made by it under constant conditions will give the same results, unquote. Thus, reliability is the degree to which an assessment tool produces stable and consistent results. Generally, the concept of reliability has to looked at from two sides. On the one side, it focuses on the ability of an instrument to produce consistent measurements. For example, if a researcher collects the same set of information more than once using the same instrument and gets the same or similar results under the same and similar conditions, that the instrument is said to be reliable. On the other side, it focuses on the degree of consistency in the measurements made by an instrument. It means the extent of difference in the measurements when the researcher collects the same set of information from more than once using the same instrument and gets the same or similar results under the same or similar conditions. If difference exists, there is an error, which is an indication of the extent of inaccuracy, and thereby one can say this is due to the instrument's unreliability. Hence, reliability is the degree of accuracy or precision in the measurements made by a research instrument. By and large, the lower the degree of error in an instrument, the higher the reliability. For example, suppose a researcher developed a questionnaire to ascertain the prevalence of domestic violence in a community. When the researcher administered the questionnaire in a sample of households and found that domestic violence is prevalent at about 10% of the households. If the researcher follows the same questionnaire without much time lag on the same sample of households under similar conditions and observed that the prevalence of domestic violence is about 20%, then one can come to the conclusion that the questionnaire has not given a comparable result, which may mean it is unreliable. Suppose if such prevalence is just about 12% in the second attempt, one may say that it is reliable to a large extent. Thus, the lesser the difference between the two sets of results, the higher the reliability of the instrument. Now, we will learn a few things about what are the factors affecting the reliability of a research instrument. In the social sciences, generally it is impossible to prepare a research tool which is 100% accurate. This is not only because a research instrument cannot be so, but also because it is impossible to control the factors affecting reliability. Some of such factors are listed here. They are the wording of questions, the physical setting, the respondent's temperament, the researcher's temperament, the nature of the interaction, differential responses by different respondents. We will briefly discuss about each one of these. The wording of questions. Even a slight ambiguity in the wording of questions or statements can affect the reliability of a research instrument, because of the fact that respondents may interpret the questions differently at different times, which in turn results in different responses. Secondly, the physical setting. If we use the instrument as part of an interview, any change in physical setting at the time of the repeat interview may affect the responses given during the first interview by a respondent, which may affect reliability. Thirdly, the respondent's temperament. A change in respondent's mode in responding to questions or writing answers in a questionnaire can change and may affect the reliability of the instrument. Fourthly, like in the case of respondent's mode, if there is any change in the researcher's motivation and interaction, which could also affect the responses given by the respondents and thereby affecting the reliability of the research instrument. Fifthly, the nature of the interaction. Generally, in the interview situation, the interaction between the researcher and the respondents can affect the responses significantly. If such interaction changes in repeated interviews of the same respondent or with different respondents, there is a possibility of affecting the instrument. The next one is the differential responses by different respondents. Suppose a research instrument is used to measure attitudes towards an issue. Some respondents, after having expressed their opinion, may feel that as compared to their normal attitude, they have been too negative or too positive towards the issue. The second time, they may express that opinion differently, thereby affecting reliability. Now, we will move upon the methods of determining the reliability. In social science research, especially while carrying out quantitative research, there are several methods to determine the reliability of an instrument, which are classified broadly under two headings, that is external consistency and internal consistency procedures. First, we will look upon the external consistency. There are two most commonly used procedures under external consistency, which are based on the comparing findings from two independent processes of data collection with each other as a means of verifying the reliability of the measure. Test retest reliability, and second one is parallel forms reliability. Under test retest reliability, this method is commonly used for establishing the reliability of a research tool. As per this, an instrument is administered once, that is test, and then again, that is retest, under the same or similar conditions. The ratio of difference between the test and retest scores, like the findings earlier stated in the case of prevalence of domestic violence, is an indication of the reliability of the instrument. That is, the greater the ratio or the smaller the difference, the higher the reliability of the instrument. Generally, a test retest ratio of 1 for a difference of 0, which means no difference, indicates 100% reliability of the instrument. On the other way, any deviation from this indicates less reliability. That is, the smaller the ratio or the larger the difference, the less the reliability of instrument. This procedure is mostly used by psychologists to test intelligence, personality, self-esteem, stigma, etc. among the same group of people over a period of time. For estimating the extent of reliability, Cotter-Platt and or Pearson's R is to be computed. Suppose if the Pearson's R for two sets, that is test and retest, of scores of the same instrument is plus 0.95, the instrument is said to be highly reliable. Generally, if a test reset correlation of plus 0.80 or greater is considered to indicate good or high reliability. The major advantage of this procedure is that it permits the instrument to be compared with itself than the use of another instrument. The main disadvantage of this procedure is that a respondent may recall the responses and he or she gave in the first round, which in turn may affect the reliability of the instrument. Parallel forms reliability. In this procedure, the researchers considered two instruments known as parallel forms that are intended to measure some phenomena, say for example intelligence, personality, self-esteem, etc. The two instruments are then administered either to the same population or to similar populations. The results obtained from one test are compared with those obtained from the other. If they are similar, that is having high correlation nearer to 1 as noted in the previous example, it is assumed that the instrument is reliable. In this case, the main advantage is that it does not suffer from the problem of recall found in the test-retest procedures. Further, a time lapse between the two tests is not required. However, but the major disadvantage is that you need to construct two instruments to measure the same phenomenon instead of one, which is laborious and difficult task. Another disadvantage is that it is difficult to achieve comparability in the two population groups and in the two conditions under which the tests are administered. Internal consistency. The major idea behind this method is that the items or questions measuring the same phenomena of a single instrument administered to a group of people on one occasion to estimate reliability. Here, the number of items or questions in an instrument does not matter. Even a few randomly selected items or questions from the total pool to test the reliability of an instrument, each segment of questions thus reconstructed should each segment of questions thus constructed should reflect reliability more or less the same extent. It is based upon the logic that if each item or question is an indicator of some aspect of a phenomenon, therefore, each segment constructed will still reflect different aspects of the phenomenon, even though it is based upon fewer items or questions. There are different procedures to measure the internal consistency reliability, but here two commonly used ones are discussed. One is the average inter-item correlation and the second one is split half reliability. First, we will discuss a few words about average inter-item correlation. In this procedure, all of the items in an instrument that are designed to measure the same construct or phenomenon are used. Then, first compute the correlation between each pair of items. For example, if a researcher has 6 items, then he will have 15 different item pairings, that is 15 correlations. The average inter-item correlation is simply the average or mean of all these correlations, that is product moment correlations. Suppose if a researcher gets an average inter-item correlation of 0.90 with the individual correlation ranging from 0.84 to 0.95, it can be concluded that the instrument is having higher reliability. The next type of reliability test is split half reliability. This is the most commonly used procedure for measuring the reliability of an instrument. This involves splitting the items into two sets, such as the first and the second halves of the items are the even and odd numbered items that are designed to measure attitudes towards an issue or phenomenon. Then a score is computed for each set of items and the relationship between the two sets of scores is examined. Here reliability is calculated by using product moment correlation. Suppose in a data set, if the split half correlation of 0.80 or greater is generally considered good internal consistency. In the recent period, the most common measure of internal consistency used by social science researchers is a statistic called Cronbach alpha. Conceptually, alpha is the mean of all possible split half correlations for a set of items. Here again, a value of plus 0.80 or greater is generally taken to indicate good internal consistency. In sum, in this module, detailed discussion is made to understand about the validity and reliability, including their importance, types, procedures to test the same. Hope by having knowledge about these, you may be able to prepare research tools with better validity and higher reliability in your research endeavors in population studies.